Updating tonight's top stories, a London-bound Air India passenger plane with 242 people on board crashes in India's western city of Ahmedabad. Authorities say the jet issued a mayday call and crashed immediately after takeoff. 242 people have reportedly died. Flight AI-171 reportedly went down outside the airport perimeter, crashing into a nearby hostel for doctors and killing a number of medical students. Today's incident marks the first time a Boeing 787 has crashed. That's according to the Aviation Safety Network database. Here's what we know so far about the aircraft, which is one of India's most modern passenger planes in service. Introduced in 2011, the 7878 is the first model in Boeing's Dreamliner series. It's a twin-aisle aircraft which seats up to 250 passengers. Air India received its first Dreamliner in 2012 after waiting nearly 4 years. The aircraft, which crashed today, was carrying 242 people. Of that number, 12 were crew members. Authorities confirmed that there were 169 Indian nationals on board. Other passengers included 53 British citizens, 7 Portuguese and 1 Canadian. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi has called the tragedy deeply saddening and heartbreaking beyond words. Mr. Modi has directed authorities, including India's Home Affairs Minister Amit Singh, to visit Ahmedabad and ensure that all assistance is extended to those who are affected. Meanwhile, British Prime Minister Keir Starmer expressed condolences to victims at what he calls a deeply distressing time, adding that his thoughts are with the passengers and their families. Amit Singh joins us now. He's founder of Safety Matters Foundation and he joins us live from New Delhi. Mr. Singh, you have watched, there's been footage on Indian television of what happened before the crash of this plane. And you have years of experience, both in terms of management as well as actually training pilots in safety. What's your read on what could have happened?
The best we can make out is from a video in which we can see the aircraft airborne and desperately trying to climb, but the trajectory is going down. The aircraft nose is going up steadily. So what we can see in the video is the landing gear, which are the wheels, are still down. And normally, when we take off, the aircraft gets airborne, and soon, within 5 seconds, the crew puts the landing gear up because it causes a lot of drag and is detrimental to the climb.
All right, so if I could just
why
sum
did
this
the
up.
aircraft not put the gear up? So that is...
Pardon me for
basically,
interrupting.
it led to a stall.
So essentially, pardon my ignorance, as a plane takes off, the nose points upwards. So you should see the nose pointing upwards and the plane itself on a trajectory headed upwards as well. But what you saw in the clearest footage that you could find on Indian TV was the nose trying to head up, but the plane itself headed down. And that for you suggests what?
That clearly suggests that the aircraft has stalled, which means the wings have failed to produce enough lift to sustain the weight of the aircraft. Normally, the wings produce more lift as the aircraft speed increases or the engine thrust increases. Engine develops more power. So here, what we see is the aircraft going down, but the nose going up. So the pilot is desperately trying to keep the aircraft airborne that's a natural reaction to pull the nose up, while the aircraft is not sustaining lift, which means the engine thrust is not sufficient to match that particular angle which the pilot wants. And with the landing gear down, it is creating more drag. So the aircraft trajectory is going down. So the aircraft is basically stalled into the buildings below.
So aviation authorities have confirmed that the crash was almost immediately after takeoff. So if, as you suggest, the pilot was struggling to keep the plane taking off, even as the thrust was insufficient for that to happen. What are the errors that could have fed into this deadly incident?
To begin with, it is the weight of the aircraft. So it could be a loading error because it is basically somebody feeding the data into a computer, either the loading personnel or the crew. Anybody who feeds, they have their individual computers, but the system has certain redundancies and safety barriers which are developed to catch these errors. And there are checklists which are made to catch critical errors. So all those would have been performed before takeoff. However, there are certain cases in the past, like an LL which took off with a 40 tons error, or Air France cargo took off with 100-ton errors. Those are gross errors. When there are gross errors, they are beyond the scope of tolerance which the system can sustain. So those errors multiplied or coupled with another failure can lead to an accident. One single failure normally does not lead to an accident. It is multiple or successive failures which are closely coupled will lead to a failure. So it could be possibly an overloaded aircraft on a hot summer day, and you have a loss of thrust, partial thrust or complete loss of thrust, that the aircraft goes down. And it has happened a couple of seconds after takeoff, because normally you put the gear up, but there was some distraction which prevented the pilots from putting the gear up. The gear up is a critical phase because that causes a lot of drag. And that also leads to a faster rate of descent. So clearly from the visuals, it is seen that there was not enough thrust developed by the engines, because there have been cases of bird hits. There are enough birds around the airport, Ahmedabad airport. And in India, especially, the number of bird hits around all the airports have been increasingly steadily because of a number of factors, be it sanitary or other,
Mr.
which are
Singh,
attracting big birds, kites and all.
When accidents like these happen, it is almost too convenient to point back and say, well, this or that should or might have been done. But what you're saying is there is a margin of error, and that the many checks that are in place allow for some margin of error. But the level of errors that were committed that led to this incident today exceeded that margin of error. Now, I believe you are behind the first air industry, the aviation safety survey in 2020 that India ever saw, and you delivered your assessment to the regulator at that point. And I believe that your assessment at that point, you gave the aviation industry in India the worst passing, or rather not a passing mark. You called the level of safety pathological, which is the lowest band possible. So in a way, even in 2020, you did foresee errors that could lead to incidents that we have seen today.
Correct. So as per that survey, basically there's a loss of trust between the stakeholders, be it the regulators, operator, or the flight crew. None of them, they don't trust each other. So the system is not getting enough credible data to do a risk assessment or assess the present situation. Further to that, there was the International Civil Aviation Organization, which conducted an audit in 2022, wherein the safety assessment was increased, and the Indian authorities were very happy with the performance of safety oversight, the scorecard which was given by the ICAO. But if you look inside the report, there are issues like any accidents in the last 5 years. The report says none, whereas there was a major accident in Calicut, and there was an accident of where there were casualties, and there was an accident of an Indigo ATR. So those have not been recorded. So certainly the report card will look bright because of those issues. The whole safety setup, yeah.
All right, a final question here. Sorry for cutting on. If there's loss of life there's no quantifying the grief that would accompany the loss of 242 at least lives, given that there's loss of life on the ground as well, according to reports. But the soul searching that will take place in India's aviation industry after this happens, would that be sufficient to make the changes that you have been recommending now for years? Final question.
See, an accident does not happen out of the blue. There are enough precursors to an accident. In the past 1 month, we have seen a number of helicopter accidents, training aircraft accidents, and commercial airline accidents. But the aviation industry and safety, especially in India, is on stilts. India is slated to be number 3 in aviation today, but the foundation is so weak that we do not have institutions which produce high-quality professionals. So the regulator does not have adequate oversight or the capability. So what you say, the pathological state, is because the operators want to maximize their profits, compromise with safety, and the regulator does not know what's actually going on the ground. On paper, everything is fine, hunky-dory, but on the ground, things are not okay, which we see periodically such things happening. And there has to be a complete overhaul of the system, the aviation safety setup and investigation setup.
Thanks for Mr. Amit Singh there, looking into possible causes for today's accident at the Ahmedabad airport, and also looking further into what profound changes might be required of India's aviation industry. Amit Singh, founder of Safety Matters Foundation in New Delhi.